Today, I'd like to talk about the Kashmir situation because it's a really hot topic right now, and I haven't really spoken about it. I do have Kashmiri heritage. My ancestors were Kashmiri, so I feel like I've got something to say about this topic. What I'm going to do in this podcast is I'm going to explain kind of what's going on with India and Pakistan. Some of you, or most of you, already know what's happening, but for those of you that don't know, I'll get into it and I'll give you my thoughts on it as well. So here we go. So why is Kashmir controversial? Kashmir is a Himalayan region that both India and Pakistan claim that it's fully theirs. The area was once a princely state called Jammu and Kashmir, but it joined India in 1947 when the subcontinent was divided up at the end of the British rule. India and Pakistan subsequently went to war over it, and each came to control different parts of the territory with a ceasefire line agreed. There has been violence in the Indian administered side, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, for 30 years due to a separatist insurgency against Indian rule. So what happened now? In the first few days of August of this year, 2019, there were signs of something afoot in Kashmir. Tens of thousands of additional Indian troops were deployed. A major Hindu pilgrimage was cancelled. Schools and colleges were shut. Tourists were ordered to leave. Telephone and internet services were suspended, and regional political leaders were placed under house arrest. But most of the speculation was that Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, which gave some special privileges to the people of the state, would be scrapped. The government then stunned everyone by saying it was revoking nearly all of Article 370, which 35A is part of, and which has been the basis of Kashmir's complex relationship with India for some 70 years. So how significant is Article 370? Well, the article allowed the state of a certain amount of autonomy. So Kashmir was allowed to have its own government to an extent, and its own constitution, a separate flag, and freedom to make laws. Foreign affairs, defence and communication remained preserved of the central government. As a result, Jammu and Kashmir could make its own rules relating to permanent residency, ownership of property, and fundamental rights. It could also bar Indians from outside the state from purchasing property or settling there. The constitutional provision had underpinned India's often fraught relationship with Kashmir, the only Muslim majority region to join India at the partition. Why did the government do it? Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party had long opposed Article 370, and revoking it was in the party's 2019 election manifesto. They argue it needed to be scrapped to integrate Kashmir and put it on the same footing as the rest of India. After returning to power with a massive mandate in the April-May general elections, the government lost no time in acting on its pledge. Critics of Monday's move are linking it to the economic slowdown that India is currently facing. They say it provides much needed diversion for the government. Many Kashmiris believe that the BJP ultimately wants to change the demographic character of the Muslim majority region by allowing non-Kashmiris to buy land there. Although Home Minister Amit Shah's announcement in Parliament on Monday came as a surprise to most Indians, it would have taken the government some preparation to arrive at the decision. The move also fits in with Modi's desire to show that the BJP is tough on Kashmir and Pakistan. So what's changed on the ground? Kashmir will no longer have a separate constitution, but will have to abide by the Indian constitution, much like any other state. All Indian laws will automatically be applicable to Kashmiris, and people from outside the state will be able to buy property there. The government says this will bring development to the region. I want to tell the people of Jammu and Kashmir what damage Article 370 and 35A did to the state, Mr. Shah told Parliament. It's because of these sections that democracy was never fully implemented. Corruption increased in the state, that no development could take place. The government is also moving to break up the state into two smaller, federally administered territories. One region will combine Muslim majority Kashmir and Hindu majority Jammu. The other is Buddhist majority Ladakh, which is culturally and historically close to Tibet. P. Chidambaram, a senior leader in the opposition Congress party, described the decision as a catastrophic step and warned in Parliament that it could have serious consequences. You may think you have scored a victory, but you are wrong, and history will prove you to be wrong. Future generations will realize what a grave mistake this House is making today, he said. Is this all legal? According to the Constitution, Article 370 could only be modified with the agreement of the state government, but there hasn't been much of a state government in Jammu and Kashmir for over a year now. In June of last year, India imposed federal law after the government of the then Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti was reduced to a minority. This meant the federal government only had to seek the consent of the governor who imposes its rule. The government says it is well within the rights to bring in the changes and that similar decisions have been taken by federal governments in the past. But expert opinion is sharply divided. One constitutional expert, Subhash Kashyap, told a news agency ANI that the order was constitutionally sound and that no legal and constitutional fault can be found in it. However, constitutional expert A.G. Nurani told BBC Hindi that it was an illegal decision akin to committing fraud that could be challenged in the Supreme Court. Opposition political parties could have launched a legal challenge, but Kashmir is an emotive issue with many Indians, and most parties would be wary of opposing the move lest they be branded anti-India. This could leave any challenge up to individuals and activists. So that's the end of that article. Wow, I can seriously see this turning into a Israel-Palestine conflict where you have a state that has its own laws, that has its own constitution. You know, it's protected by Article 370, and you're trying to revoke that. Now, the article talks about whether this is legal or not, and I'll just have a quick look through this article again on that section. So, this article, according to this article, they say, according to the Constitution, Article 370 could only be modified with the agreement of state government, but then they say there hasn't been much of a state government in Jammu and Kashmir for over a year now. So I think The government claims that it's within their right, but if Kashmir as a whole is its own state and it's got laws that protect it, then just leave it alone. Let it continue to function as a state, Modi. Come on, don't change what doesn't need to be changed. There's no need for it all. Don't turn this into one of Israel-Palestine type things. So I'm going to read one more article. I had a few articles that I wanted to read, but I thought by that time I would run out of steam and you guys will probably get bored. And so I'll just read one other article which relates to this article, and I will leave a link of all of those articles in the description box below so you can read them for yourself. So hold on while I get the other article. Thank you. So we're going to look at why India and Pakistan are fighting over Kashmir. And some of what I read in this new article, might relate to what I've already read to you in the previous article. So I do apologize, but it's all very relevant, and I will give my thoughts on this topic, on this article as well, and I'll come to a conclusion at the end after I've read everything out to you. So I hope you stick around. Thank you. Why India and Pakistan are fighting over Kashmir. How old is this fight? Even before India and Pakistan won their independence from Britain in August of 1947, the area was hotly contested. So this fight was long before the British ever left India. Under the partition plan provided by the Indian Independence Act, Kashmir was free to accede to either India or Pakistan. The Maharaja, which is a local leader or local ruler, Hari Singh, initially wanted Kashmir to become independent, but in October of 1947 chose to join India in return for its help against an invasion of tribesmen from Pakistan. I'll even leave the link about the Kashmir profile timeline so you can see for yourself the different situations that occurred in different time spans, if that's helpful for you. A war erupted and India approached the United Nations asking it to intervene. The United Nations recommended holding a meeting to settle, or holding a vote to settle the question of whether the state would join India or Pakistan. However, the two countries could not agree to a deal to demilitarize the region before the referendum could be held. In July of 1949, India and Pakistan signed an agreement to establish a ceasefire line as recommended by the UN, and the region became divided. A second war followed in 1965. Then in 1999, India fought a brief but bitter conflict with Pakistani-backed forces. By that time, India and Pakistan had both declared themselves to be nuclear powers. Today, Delhi and Islamabad both claim Kashmir in full, but control parts of it. Territory is recognized internationally as Indian-administrated Kashmir and Pakistani-administrated Kashmir. Why is there so much unrest in the India-administrated part? An armed revolt has been waged against India's rule in the region for 3 decades, claiming tens of thousands of lives. India blames Pakistan for stirring the unrest by backing separate militants in Kashmir. This, of course, Pakistan denies. Now a sudden change into Kashmir status on the India side has created further apprehensions. Indian administrated Kashmir has held a special position within the country historically thanks to Article 370, a clause in the constitution which gave it significant autonomy, including its own constitution, a separate flag, and independence over all matters except foreign affairs, defense, and communications. On 5th of August, India revoked that 7-decade-long privileged status as the governing party in the Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP) had promised in its 2019 election manifesto. The Hindu nationalist BJP has long opposed Article 370 and has repeatedly called for its abolishment. Telephone networks and the internet were cut off in the region in the days before the presidential order was announced. Public gatherings were banned and tens of thousands of troops were sent in. Tourists were told to leave Kashmir under warning of a terror attack. I'll just see what else there is to read out for you guys, and then I'll talk about it. 2 former chief ministers of Jammu and Kashmir, the Indian state which encompasses the disputed territory, were placed under house arrest. I'll just read out a tweet from a lady called Mehbooba Mufti, who we just talked about a little earlier. Today, the people of Jammu and Kashmir who repose their faith in the institutions of India like Parliament and Supreme Court feel defeated and betrayed. By dismembering the state and fraudulently taking away what is rightfully and legally ours, they have further complicated the Kashmir dispute. Pakistan fiercely condemned development, branding it illegal and vowing to exercise all possible options against it. It downgraded diplomatic ties with India and suspended all trade. India responded by saying they regretted Pakistan's statement and reiterating that Article 370 was an internal matter as it did not interfere with the boundaries of the territory. Within Kashmir, opinions about the territory rightfully allegiance are diverse and strongly held. Many do not want to be governed by India, preferring either independence or union with Pakistan instead. Oops, what happened there? Sorry guys, I seem to have lost the article, please bear with me. Yeah, where was I? Yes. Yeah. Religion is one factor. Jammu and Kashmir is more than 60% Muslim, making it the only state within India where Muslims are in the majority. Critics of the BJP fear that the move is designed to change the state's demographic makeup by giving people from the rest of the country the right to acquire property and settle there permanently. Ms. Mufti told the BBC, "They just want to occupy our land and want to make this Muslim majority state like any other state and reduce us to a minority and disempower us totally." Feelings of disenfranchisement have been aggravated in the Indian administrated Kashmir by high unemployment and complaints of human rights abuses by security forces battling street protesters and fighting insurgents. Anti-India sentiment in the state has embedded and flowed since 1989, but the region witnessed a fresh wave of violence after the death of 22-year-old militant leader Burhan Wani in July of 2016. He died in a battle with security forces, sparking massive protests across the valley. Wani, whose social media videos were popular among young people, is largely credited with reviving and legitimizing the image of militancy in the region. I'll just see what else there is to read to you. So, were there any high hopes for peace in the new century? India and Pakistan did indeed agree to a ceasefire in 2003 after years of bloodshed along the de facto border, also known as line of control. Pakistan later promised to stop funding insurgents in the territory while India offered them an amnesty if they renounced militancy. In 2014, India's current Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power, promising a tough line in Pakistan, but also showed interest in holding peace talks. Nawaz Sharif, the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, attended Modi's swearing-in ceremony in Delhi, but a year later, India blamed Pakistan-based groups for an attack on its air base in Pathankot in the northern state of Punjab. Mr. Modi also cancelled a scheduled visit to the Pakistani capital Islamabad for a regional summit in 2017. Since then, there has not been any progress in talks between neighbours. So does this mean we are back to square one? The bloody summer of street protest in India-administrated Kashmir in 2016 had already dimmed hopes for a lasting peace in the region. So 2016 was when Wani died, and that sparked a lot of protests and a lot more violence and further damaging relations. Then in 2018, in June, the state government then was upended when Modi's BJP pulled out of a coalition government run by Ms. Mufti's People Democratic Party. Jammu and Kashmir was since under direct rule from Delhi, which fueled further anger. The deaths of more than 40 Indian soldiers in a suicide attack on 14 February 2019 have ended any hope of a thaw in the immediate future. India blamed Pakistan-based militant groups for the violence, the deadliest targeting Indian soldiers in Kashmir since the insurgency began 3 decades ago. Following the bombing, India said that it would take all possible diplomatic steps to isolate Pakistan from the international community. On 26 February, it launched airstrikes in Pakistan territory, which it claimed targeted militant bases. Pakistan denied the raids had caused major damage or casualties, but promised to respond, fueling fears of confrontation. A day later, it said that it had shot down 2 Indian Air Force jets in its airspace and captured a fighter pilot, who was later returned unharmed to India. So, what happens next? India's parliament has now passed a bill splitting Indian administrated Kashmir into 2 territories, governed directly by Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, and remote mountainous Ladakh. China, which shares a disputed border with India in Ladakh, has objected to the recognition and accused Delhi of undermining its territorial sovereignty. Pakistan's now Prime Minister Imran Khan has vowed to challenge India's action at the United States Security Council and take the matter to the International Criminal Court. In an ominous warning, he said, if the world does not act today, if the developed world does not uphold its own laws, then things will come to a place that we will not be responsible for. But Delhi insists that there is no external implication to its decision to reorganize the state, as it had not changed the line of control or boundaries of the region. United States President Donald Trump has offered to mediate in the crisis, an overdue an overture that Delhi has rejected. So that's the end of that article. Well, I got through two articles on this topic because they were both very, very relevant. So, if I was to summarize this all, obviously, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a Hindu nationalist. He is a Hindu. He wants, I believe he wants Kashmir to be a Hindu majority because he reckons that the fact that it's a Muslim majority needs to be challenged. So I have a feeling that this is an internal battle. That, because he's a nationalist and he wants to put his own people of faith the majority rather than the minority. I think I could be wrong about this. Maybe he just wants to control Kashmir because it doesn't have a state government, so he feels like he can just swoop in and take over. But the fact of the matter is that, because Kashmir has the Article 370, then I feel like it should be left alone. And Imran Khan, he's not going to stay silent if we keep attacking and if we keep provoking the issue. He will fight back. And in the end, civilians are going to be the one who are going to pay the price, as is the case with every war. I mean, take a look at Palestine. Look at how many people are dying in Palestine because of a war between Hamas and Netanyahu. I think just leave 370 alone, Article 370 alone, and have proper talks. See if you can come to an agreement as to what should happen. But there's no point having a war over it. There's no point killing innocent civilians. Personally, I think Article 370 should be respected because it's a legal documentation that protects Kashmir. Kashmir should be recognized as its own separate little country. That's what I think. And maybe place a government there. Maybe say we need a smaller state government that reports to the bigger government. Maybe that could be one solution. There was something that I read in the article that I wanted to talk about a bit more. I'll just have a look. If I can find it. I don't think I can find it now. Nope, I don't think it's here. But yeah, anyway, I think it's all about power grab, Modi's a nationalist, so he wants to take over everything, and he wants his own religion to proceed over the Islamic religion. That is one of the issues that could be looked at. So, what I think... Oh yeah, here is the article. So, obviously, Article 370 gave a clause in the Constitution which gave Kashmir significant autonomy. Kashmir had its own constitution, its own separate flag, and independence over all matters except foreign affairs, defense, and communications. So yeah, I mean, perhaps they could look at this about foreign affairs, defense, and communication, and maybe Pakistan and India could come to an agreement without having to resort to violence, which will end up killing civilians rather than people who have got money. I mean, if you've got money, then you can move out of the country, can't you? But majority of the people in Pakistan are really poor, and they won't be able to cope with this. So yeah, I mean, I don't want this to turn into a Palestine sort of thing. I don't want this should not be about religion, it should be about people. People are more important than religion. That's what I think. So I may come back to this topic, and I may make another video about this. It's already 30 minutes. Wow, this is my longest video yet that I've ever made. So, yeah. So India and Pakistan go to the United Nations again and just talk it over, come to a reasonable agreement. And the fact that Modi has taken away the access to internet is really baffling, because what are you scared of? Are you scared that people will try to reach out for help, or are you committing atrocities that you don't want the rest of the world to know about? What's the point of cutting off internet access and communication to the outside world? That seems really, really dodgy. Red flags are rising, you know. Red flags are going way up. Why would you cut off communication? Are you committing atrocities? Do you don't want to get out there? Are you killing civilians that you don't want the world to know about? That's just wrong, in my opinion, to cut off communication. So I would hope that you would see sense and restore communication. Do you not want people to call out for help? Do you want people to be submissive to you? Are you trying to run a dictatorship rather than a democracy? Oh, well, so I'll leave that with you guys. Tell me what you think. Do you think, sorry if I come across as a bit dazed in this video, it's because I've read 2 articles, and just taken a bit of steam out of me, but I'm doing my best for you guys, and I hope you do appreciate that. I will be making more videos on this topic because it is an ongoing issue, and I don't think that it's going to be resolved anytime soon, because Modi and Imran Khan are 2 hot-headed people who will go to war with one another if they don't come to an agreement. I mean, based on what this article said, you know, Nawaz Sharif was a friend of Modi's, and had he been in power right now, I reckon there could have been some kind of talks. But I don't think Imran Khan is ready for a chat if Modi keeps striking Pakistan. I can see there being a war. I don't want there to be a war. I don't want civilians to die. I want there to be peace talks. Ideally I want Kashmir to be left alone, to be allowed to make its own laws, its own rights, allow anyone that want into the country. That's what the ideal situation is. Maybe you talk about dividing it between Pakistan and India and say this is final. You don't cross over our line, we don't cross over your line. There's loads of options you can talk about, and I hope they do talk. Because if they don't talk, then there's going to be a war coming. And I'd rather not have a war, because then the whole world would get involved. But seriously, bring back communication into the country. WhatsApp, email, videos. Then don't take away communication. That's just baffling to me. I don't know what to say. There's no need for that. Unless you've got something to hide, Modi. I don't know, maybe you do. Maybe you don't want people to know what you're doing to Kashmiris. But yeah, I hope you do see sense. I mean, recently Bollywood made a movie about Modi, portraying him as this warrior, this tough guy, this nice guy, the guy that will do anything for his country. A guy like that you would not imagine would cut off communication. Yeah, I would not imagine a guy that doing that kind of stuff, you know, cutting off communication so that nobody knows about what's happening. And it's only because we have good journalists who are prepared to go on the ground, and we are able to get this kind of news and able to report it back. Sorry. Yeah, so that's what I think. A guy that's got a film about him would not do something like this. There's no way. So I want to quit this podcast. Not quit podcast in general, quit this one, but I feel like I want to get my message across that let's not do a war. Let's just have talks. Maybe if Modi and Imran Khan don't get along, then have a mediator, somebody that separates them two and talks on their behalf, maybe. I mean, you do that for children, not for grown-ups. But if that's the way it has to be done, then let's do it. I don't mind. But the best solution is to leave Kashmir as it is. There's no point turning into a Hindu majority or a Muslim majority. Let's just have a human majority, not dead humans. That's what I think. So I'm going to leave you with that and see you hopefully in the next podcast. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.